the scream of the banshee. In Ireland, it is said that if one hears the scream of the banshee, you or someone close to you will die. Is the scream of the banshee real? Does it mean you are about to die? Let's take a look. Check out this video and be sure to subscribe.
Imagine, if you will, a quiet night in the rolling green hills of Ireland. Mist and moonlight over a gnarled tree. The air is still, cool, the scent of damp earth, peat smoke from a distant hearth. All is silent, leaves rustle in a lone hawthorn, then piercing the quiet. A sound begins. A sound unlike any other. A long, mournful cry. A ribbon of pure sorrow. High-pitched. Ethereal. Grief so deep it chills the marrow. According to centuries of folklore, this is the cry of the banshee, a harbinger of death. The word banshee is steeped in Gaelic history, from Old Irish benside. To truly understand the banshee, one must journey back in time to an Ireland where the veil was thin. The legend did not spring fully formed. It grew from ancient Celtic beliefs about spirits' ancestors, the sacredness of family lineage. The banshee is described as a solitary female spirit, but her appearance is famously inconsistent. Sometimes she is a beautiful young woman with flowing silver hair, eyes red from weeping a vision of ethereal sorrow. At other times, a stooped, terrifying old hag, a crone with a shrouded face, a malevolent glare. In some traditions, she is washing a blood-stained shirt, the shirt of someone about to die, known as the bean knee. She might be tall and spectral or small and hunched. The primary evidence for the banshee's existence, if one can call it that, falls into three distinct categories, each offering a different texture to the legend. The first, and most abundant, is the vast ocean of folk tales. These are the stories passed down orally, from grandparent to grandchild. The local legends that attach themselves to specific places, a certain bridge, an ancient ruin, a particular stretch of road. These tales form the very bedrock of the banshee mythos, establishing the rules of her appearances and the nature of her cry. They are the collective memory of a culture, preserved through vivid and often frightening narratives, polished smooth by countless retellings over centuries. The second type of evidence comes in the form of personal, eyewitness reports. These are contemporary or near-contemporary accounts from individuals who claim to have experienced the phenomenon firsthand. A person might recount hearing an inexplicable wailing outside their window on the night a relative died, even if that relative was hundreds of miles away. Sometimes, entire families report hearing the same sound simultaneously, lending a certain weight to their testimony. The third category is what we might term historical notes. The folk tales surrounding the banshee are as varied and numerous as the Irish families they are said to follow. A recurring and powerful theme within these stories is the idea of an ancestral bond. The banshee is not a random spirit who cries for just anyone. She is fiercely loyal to specific, ancient, Irish bloodlines. The belief holds that the great Gaelic families, the O'Neills, the O'Briens, the O'Donnells, the O'Connors, and the Kavanaghs, each have their own banshee. This supernatural attachment was seen as a mark of prestige, a sign that a family was so ancient and noble that even the spirits of the other world took notice. To have a banshee weep for your kin was a somber, yet distinguished honor. One common narrative strand tells of a banshee who was once a mortal woman, a gifted singer or poet, deeply cherished by the clan's founder. To move from the general to the specific can often be illuminating. While thousands of stories exist, let us consider one particular account, a simple and unadorned story passed down in a family from County Clare. It was related by an elderly woman named Sinead, who spoke of an experience from her childhood in the 1940s. Her voice was steady, her memory clear, as she recounted the events of one particular night. She was about 10 years old, sharing a small room with her two younger sisters in their modest cottage. Her grandfather, a man she adored, was gravely ill in the room next door, and the whole house was wrapped in a somber, waiting silence. The night was black as pitch, with no moon to speak of. We were all meant to be asleep, but you can't sleep in a house that's holding its breath. Sometime after midnight, I heard it. It started low, like the wind sighing, but it wasn't the wind. Now, let us step away from the firelit world of folklore and into the bright, analytical light of skepticism. For every person who believes in the banshee as a supernatural entity, there is another who seeks a more rational terrestrial explanation. The skeptic does not necessarily dismiss the experiences of people like Sinead. Rather, they question the interpretation of those experiences. From this perspective, the sound heard in the night is very real, but its source is not a spirit from the other world. Instead, it is likely to be something far more ordinary, which has been misidentified due to circumstances, psychology, cultural conditioning. It's a classic case of seeing, or in this case, hearing, what you are prepared to hear. The most common and compelling skeptical argument points to the sounds of nature. The nocturnal world is filled with strange and often eerie noises that can easily be mistaken for a human cry, especially by a tired or anxious mind. The prime culprit is often a bird. The barn owl, for instance, does not hoot. It lets out a long, drawn-out, and genuinely terrifying shriek. The call of a vixen during mating season is another contender, as it can sound uncannily like a woman screaming in distress. Add to this the mournful howl of the wind rushing through a narrow gap, whistling around the eaves of an old house, or moaning through the branches of a tree. When we place the legend and the skeptical view side by side, we are not looking at a simple case of right versus wrong. Instead, we are observing two fundamentally different ways of interpreting the world. The folkloric perspective is rooted in emotion tradition and a sense of connection to a mystical past. It doesn't seek scientific proof because its truth is not scientific. It is a cultural and emotional truth. For the believer, the banshee's cry is a profound experience that validates their place within a long family history and offers a framework for understanding one of life's most difficult and frightening events: death. The skeptical perspective, on the other hand, is rooted in reason evidence and the scientific method. It operates on the principle of Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. Choosing is personal. No definitive proof satisfies both believer and skeptic. So why, in our modern scientific age of 2026, does the story of the banshee persist? Why does it continue to fascinate us, to send a shiver down our spines? The answer, I believe, lies in the fundamental human need for narrative. Stories are how we make sense of the world. Death is perhaps the greatest and most frightening mystery of all. The banshee legend provides a narrative framework for death. It transforms a cold biological event into something more, an event with a prelude, a warning, a sense of spiritual significance. It gives death a voice, literally. The banshee serves as a cultural coping mechanism. In a world before modern medicine, a story that offered a warning provided a small illusion of control, or at least of preparation. The cry of the banshee allowed a family to brace themselves emotionally for an impending loss. It was a signal to gather, to pray, to say goodbyes. Moreover, the legend of the banshee is inextricably linked to Irish identity. It is part of Ireland like shamrocks, harps, and the Gaelic language. We have traveled a winding path from the misty origins of an ancient legend to the clear-eyed analysis of the modern skeptic. On one hand, the banshee as a spirit messenger, a loyal, weeping guardian whose cry is a somber note in the great symphony of Irish folklore. This view gives us a world rich with meaning bonds of family that transcend death, the passing of a soul, as a supernatural announcement. On the other hand, the rational explanation, shriek of an owl, shriek of a fox, the moan of the wind, tricks of a grieving and expectant mind, comfort of logic, reassurance of natural laws. Choosing between these explanations is personal. Perhaps truth lies somewhere in between. The banshee may not be a literal spirit at a window. She is a powerful cultural entity, a potent symbol of grief and heritage. Next time a long, thin cry drifts on the wind, pause and listen.